Hey Neapol fans, Neapol together, I'm back. So decided to bring you outside. It's so gorgeous out today, why not? I do want to show you, we're going to use this to show you how to properly tie on a leader. Now, as I will mention later in the video when I show you the differences between fishing lines and hooks and all that stuff, that tying on a leader is more than just tying a knot. Tying on that leader does require a little finesse. If you don't finesse it properly, the only thing you're going to do is just like your shoelaces eventually, that will come untied. But if you follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and I might just follow you back, properly tie on a leader, then and really any piece of your hooks, if you're not using a leader, then use the same technique for your hooks. If you're not if you want to put on just a hook and a weight, you can also use it for your weight as well. But so today what I'm going to do is, you see I've got it all set up here. I've got my fishing rod over here to show you. A little bit later, after this little demonstration, you're actually going to see me casting a couple of different techniques. But I'm going to bring you in close, and I want you to watch my hands when I make the knot that you really want to use for your leaders and other types of tackle. So let's bring you in. Okay, so what you want to do is first make a slip knot. And if you don't know how to make a slip knot, watch my hands. Take a line up, a piece of your line over your finger. You want to hold it with these two fingers over this finger. Tuck this underneath. Now see how I've got these two pieces looped here. Bring this over both and tuck it into that hole and pull. All right, now you have a slip knot. Ladies, if you're watching, this is the same slip knot you use in crochet and knitting, in case you do either one, which I do both. Have not done either in a very long time, but you get the idea. Now, pinch that top of that line. So now we're inside the loop. Pinch the top of your line here to make it a little bitty, and then take your leader. Now, you have two ends to a leader. You have the end where your hook is going to go, which is here. See how it's opened and it's ready for a hook. And you have this. This is actually what's going to go to the top of your fishing, really to the bottom of your fishing line, to extend it to create that leader, that extra strength that you need to catch fish without worrying about your fishing line. So thread that through. And then what you're going to do is take the other end of your leader and tuck it into that loop and then pull. Now if you wind up over the top, that's okay, just open it up a little bit and slide it down, but more or less what you're getting now is, here we go, is now an impervious knot. I am pulling on that. I used to be a bodybuilder. I'm a very strong person, and I'm not breaking that. But this is a 20-pound test. So now you've got a knot that is not going to break with a fish unless you get a huge fish that's heavier than your line is meant to do. And then you take your other end of your leader. Typically these are going to come closed. This is closed like that. This has been used before. You're going to open it, and you're going to take your hook, and you're going to go on just like that, and then close it. And there you have the leader that will stay on unless you catch something really heavy, or if it gets rusted. So you've got your hook on, Now you can use these leaders, it doesn't matter which leaders you buy, as long as you, that is to say, as long as you don't buy one of these that has the heavy weights already on them, because if you do, you've got to make sure, this is 3/4 of an ounce. It doesn't seem like much, but it is really heavy. So you want to make sure that you're buying the leaders for the fishing conditions that you're doing. So let's go in again. And I know you were really hoping for some hot chick to show you how to do all this, if there's guys actually watching this. So let's show you how to do this again. And the same goes true, I'll use this other line here. The same is true with this other type of line as well. No matter which line you are using, or maybe I won't, let's see here. Looks like it's gotten inside. So no matter what kind of line that you're using, whether it's this type of line, or this type of line, you still want to start off with that slip knot. And that slip knot is aces for you when you are learning how to do this stuff. And again, I'm taking this, I'm pulling this under, I'm putting this over both lengths like this, see here? And I'm tucking it down here and bringing it through. This is, for those of you guys who wear ties, this is how you tie your tie usually, for certain knots. So again, you've got your slip knot. You are going to put it through here and then pull this through. And then you're going to take the other end and you're going to put it through. I'm being really careful. This one has a used hook on it, so since this does have a weight on it, so I've actually pulled a little too tight, but that's okay. It's called a slip knot for a reason. You can open and close it pretty darn easy until you've fully closed it. And then once it gets down here, I'm going to give it a good pull. It is on. It is not trying to break. It is, you know, good to go. And see, you can pull it loose if you need to change it out. So, look at that. But because the force from the fish is going to pull this way, there is no way that's going to come undone. Now, if you want to take that leader off, you can pull it the opposite direction yourself and loosen that up, unless it's gotten real tight like I've just tightened that. But now you have an impervious line that you are able to go fishing with without worrying about your knot coming loose. Because a regular knot that you've tied, unless you've doubled and tripled it, will eventually come loose. It's just how knots are designed, and you know, it's just how it is. So, and then you can cut this off. I usually try to keep a box cutter or a knife or a pair of scissors in the tackle box. Cut that back off. This line is really tough to cut, so I'm just going to probably just leave that on there and put this back away. So now the next segment you're going to see is going to be me and all my fat glory standing on the bank at Raina Point on Shell Island Road in Naples, Marco Island area, showing you how to cast your fishing rod. Now I will show you real quick here. There is a term, and honestly I don't know what the term is, but I'll find it and I'll post it on the left hand side of the screen for people who are not familiar with how to fish and how to hold their fishing rod the proper way. There's a term for you guys. I've heard it a few times, and you know, it's been a while since I've heard it, but it's more or less it's making fun of you guys. So forgive me, I didn't come up with it. I'm just going to put the name on the screen. But yeah, so there is actually a term for people who hold their fishing rods improperly. And now I use the I use the term broadly for fishing rods. I use the broader term instead of saying You know, there is a type of reel. It's one of the bait casters you'll see towards the end of my video that some of the bait casters actually look like they're opposite from what I'm fixing to show you. So I'm going to put this back up on my perch, and I'm going to show you my my fishing rod. I've had this rod and reel set for ages. My son's 16. I've had this since before he was born. So I'm going to back you up. All right. So let's move my chair out of the way and show you a fishing rod and reel. So this is my Shakespeare. And it's funny, I didn't notice until yesterday. You'll see it in some pictures, some stills later that are in this video. These letters here, it says Contender Custom Shakespeare. And this gold pieces here, they're actually hologram stickers. And I got the most beautiful picture yesterday. I didn't even notice that it came out the way it did until I got home and saw it. Like, wow, that came out really cool. These actually come out rainbow in the sunlight. It was really quite cool. It made for an awesome picture. And the picture may actually end up being the thumbnail for this video. So, this is, I'm 5'6", so this is about 7'4". This is the typical length of a saltwater fishing rod. Now, Shakespeare's rods, typically, I think actually now they don't even do it, but this one can come apart right here. So if I were to, I could pull this apart and collapse it down smaller to make it ease of travel better. I didn't do that yesterday because my son's fishing rod and reel set, he's got a Shakespeare reel and an ugly stick. Ugly sticks, his does not break down. The same size. This thing has been through the ringer and back. I have caught sharks on this. I have caught just regular old fish on this. This has been dropped, it has been thrown, not by me, but this is a great rod and reel set. And because it is Shakespeare, it's got a lifetime warranty, and it's 17 years old at least. Actually, I think it's 18 years old. So she's going great. The reel is perfect. A little WD-40 on your reel, ladies. If you're just getting started in fishing, really don't know much about it, or if you've dabbled in fishing a little bit and still don't know much about it, maybe once a year if you're fishing in saltwater, just give her a little squirt with a little WD-40 and it'll go a long way. So we're going to start down here. Okay, so if you can wind up with a rod like I've got, some of these have a twisty knob. This one has one that you just slide back. This is your brake. If you were to click this down, it unhooks the bell, and the bell can go left, right, and that is your worst enemy if you've got a big fish on. Always make sure that's your brake is set. Up here, this is your drag. This is the one that you can set for the type of fish that you are catching. So if you feel like you've got a big fish on, you can actually set this drag a little bit looser so the fish can take a little bit more line, a little bit tighter so it keeps it close to wherever you're fishing at. This is what you want to set if you've got a big fish on. This is what you want to change. Don't ever do the brake. The brake will not do you any favors at all, other than, well, heck, not even that. I mean, the brake being not set doesn't work. I mean, I'm sure there's a few occasions that would work for. Maybe if you're doing WD-40 or something on the reel, you want to be able to make the reel spin. Also, if you're going to do that, this all has to come off. You've got to completely undress the entire reel to make sure that the WD-40 gets in there where it needs to get to combat the any rust or just sticking. So this, like I said, this is 17 years old. There is not a spot of rust on this reel anywhere. This is a Contender Custom CC060 ball bearing reel. Gear ratio is 4 to 6 to 1. It tells you how many yards of line it can hold. 12-pound test, it'll hold 330 yards. That's a lot. So basically, it'll hold 2/3 of this because this is 150 yards. It'll hold half of this at least. Actually, 12-pound test, 330 yards. It'll hold the whole thing and then some. 15-pound test, it'll hold 230 yards, and 17-pound test, it'll hold 200 yards. And the reason that those amounts are different is because the heavier line, the thicker it is. So down here, these are replaceable. These grips, they are replaceable if they start wearing out. Again, mine are 17 years old. Had fairly regular usage for a long time, and it looks brand new. You can almost still read the barcode on it. It's so new. It looks so new. That's not to say I haven't used it a lot, but I have. I have used this quite a bit. I just, it's been a while since I've taken it out. So, the proper way to hold your fishing rod, righty or lefty, is here. You can put it between your middle and ring finger, index finger and middle finger. You can hold it above. I would never hold it completely below. Yeah, you've got this here, but if you get a big fish, it's pulling this way, holding it below, whoop, gone. So always make sure you've got at least one finger over, and see this actually, this trigger area here is specifically designed for that. So you hold, I always hold like this. Gives me a good grip on both sides of it, and you reel like this. The wrong way to do this, and I mean, look, the eyes of your pole, I'm lying such a good part. The eyes of your pole are meant to be on the bottom. Those are the weight-bearing parts of your rod. If you turn it over like this, honestly, no. Yeah, you may be right-handed. I mean, by dexterity, you may be right-handed, but then you're having to reel backwards towards you instead of forwards. No. It is weighted to hang just like this. I've got this on one finger, and it's perfectly balanced. I'm not holding it with anything else, and that is balanced as straight as an arrow. So your fishing rod is meant to be held like this. The only time it would be different is some of the big game fishing rods are meant to be up like this, but your eyes are still on the bottom. So basically they've just mounted this fishing reel on the top instead of the bottom, but they are meant to give it, those particular ones are meant for like tarpon and sailfish and marlin fishing. They are meant to be up here, they are meant to be locked in to hip things here, and they're meant to give you all the strength in the world to catch that darn fish. There are a couple of techniques that you can use for fishing. I really can't do it on my porch, but over the shoulder like this, side like this, and under like this is where you're casting. Now, what you do on a reel like this, I don't have a Zebcos. I don't like the way they're made. I don't like them in general. The Zebcos are the little rocket ship looking ones that kids get, so they can't mess up all this stuff up top. But the way you should cast is start with the bell on top. You don't really have to. I mean, don't be lazy. You can reach around and grab it. But you grab the line like this. That way, any weight that you have or bait that you have on the line up front isn't going to drop it. And then flip your bell. While you're holding it, your other hand grabs it here, grabs it there, and you've cast overhead, side, or underneath, depending on where you're at. And as you flick, you let this go, and your bait drops, and it flies. Our local pier here, it's so busy, if you're fishing during the day, you always cast side or under, because if you cast above your shoulder, you're going to hook somebody. So like our local pier, you're going to cast like this. You're going to cast like this, and as you get to that snap point, you turn loose. Get this hand out of the way completely, and that line's gonna fly. If you're standing on a fishing pier and like this, you've got people over here, or you got people over here, you can cast right or left, it doesn't matter. But if you got people to your right or left, then you're gonna get it underneath like this, turn it almost completely upside down, and throw it, cast it out. So, it's really important when you are learning how to fish that you do learn things properly. If you're in an apartment complex or a development, like I live in a condo complex or one that has villas that has a lake, if you're learning how to fish, that is your best friend. Go to those places. Doesn't matter what you're fishing with. This is not really great for freshwater, but it works. This can be used for freshwater. Freshwater cannot really be used for saltwater fishing. They're just not designed for it. They are not made to take the weight, take the abuse. Freshwater is meant to catch a large bass, at most. Saltwater is meant to catch just about anything, and then if you're really going for the big fish, you want something twice this size, and this is thicker than a Sharpie. So if you're learning how to fish, go ahead and pick you up one of these. Ugly Stick makes these, Shakespeare makes these. You can get it even off-brand and spend half the price. Honestly, I think this whole thing was $30 when it was purchased 17, 18 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever it was. This might have been $30 for the whole set. If you buy them separately, you're going to pay at least $60 or more. So we're going to cut to a couple of clips of me casting, showing you how to do this. I'm going to reel it back in real quick. Now, if you're just learning how to fish, let me show you. If you're just learning how to fish and you're trying to do this on the slide so that your man thinks pretty good of you. So let's say I'm going to drop this real quick. Let's say that I've already cast this out. Obviously, I can't cast this on my back porch. I've already cast this out. The line is in the water, and my bell is still open. You can do one of two things. Some you can actually spin, but the first thing you want to do is when it hits the water, close that. Unless it's deep water, then let it go a little bit. Close the bell, and then you want to reel it in some just to tighten up the loose line that might be hanging. Chances are, most likely, when you've thrown it, when you've cast it out, you're going to wind up with a lot of extra line. You'll be able to see the line above the water. If you can see the ripples in the line, reel it in just a little bit. You don't want to, unless you're fly fishing, you don't want to throw out and reel it in immediately. You just want to reel it in a little bit to tighten that line up, to get rid of the loose line you have. If you're fishing with a spinner bait, spoon bait or something like that, yeah, you want to reel it in. You want to reel it in a little bit. You want to jig it in the water a little bit and jerk it in the water, make it look like it's a real fish to the fish that are trying to catch it, that are trying to eat it. So, but if you're throwing out regular bait, you're throwing out a piece of shrimp, you're throwing out squid, you're throwing out live bait, you don't need to do all that. It's going to do it for you. And the smell of it's going to attract whatever is out there. So when you cast your line, you get it where you want it, you're going to have loose line. Especially if it's a breezy day up, you're going to have loose line. If it's a total dead day on the water, you're going to have loose line. You're rolling in a few feet, maybe 1, 2, 3 turns, and that's it. Make sure you set your bell back and just chill. Now, how do you know when you've got a bite? That's a great question. So the next thing you want to do is you want to hold your line in your finger like this. And when your line is loose and it's on the finger like this, think of it as when you are using those old string and cup phones that you would make when you were a kid. The tighter you were, you could actually hear vibrations across that line. Well, if you pull this back against your finger like this and it's in the water, and obviously this is really tight because of the way I've got it, but you're going to feel, something's after it. You're going to feel when something's pulling. But also another great example of something on your line, watch for this. Your pole starts doing this, guess what? You're either on a rock or you've got a fish on. So those are some great tips from a woman who has been fishing for nearly 40 years. I really hope you took something away from this. I'm going to show you some clips now of me casting in the waters yesterday on Raina Point and Shell Island Road between Marco and Naples. I'm not exactly sure. I'm sure it's probably still Naples where it was sitting at. And then I'm going to go through some tackle and stuff with you towards the end. I was going to do that first, and I said, you know what, this is probably going to hold people's attention better. So, now that you've learned how to fish from a woman, let me show you a little bit on the water. Okay, so I did forget to show you one thing when you are tying your leaders onto your line. If you're using a leader that doesn't have a weight on it already, so let's say the leader is, let's say the top of the leader is here. See there. Let's say that's the top of the leader. So what you want to do is somewhere before you put the leader on, maybe 8 inches or so above the leader, is where you want to tie on your weight. So prior to putting on your leader, you want to take one of your weights, and see these have a hole. Small wall behind there. Is you want to you got the dropsies today, so you want to fish that through. Now, here is the real catch. When you do this, you want to tie the knot. Oops. But make sure the knot itself winds up towards the bottom. So once you get it situated, you want to work that knot down to the bottom of your weight. So adjust it with your hands. So you have the top here. Adjust it with your hands so that the knot winds up as far south. Actually, some of these you can actually, not worry about it too much, but you want to adjust it so that the knot tries to wind up at the bottom of it. But if it doesn't, don't worry about it. Okay, now you've got your weight, and you're going to tie your leader on about here, maybe a little bit lower, but there's your weight. Now what you want to avoid happening is what happens in the air, especially with this, is these things, but as you're throwing them, do this. And what will wind up happening is that it's going to wind up getting tangled up with your leader if you're not careful. So that is your extra little lesson. Let's go back to me showing you how to use your fishing rod. Okay, so this is my son's tackle box. This is actually one that we use together. My husband doesn't fish. My son and I do fish together. So this is the type of tackle box I like to use. We've used smaller ones. We've used the ones that are made like an attaché case almost. But this one is the one I like. So let me get this open for you and show you what we have in here. Now right on top I've got a couple leaders that have weights on them already. These leaders are okay to use. Just keep in mind where you are fishing at, the weights that you use. Like where we were fishing yesterday, the weight I had on my line was just too heavy, but I didn't want to change anything out. These bobbers I tried yesterday, I think, as again, my weight were too heavy, so these guys did not float. And let me show you why they did not float. I did not realize when I was trying to use it that that is a weight right there. So if you are going to fish in shallow open water, this is all you need for a weight. And then what happens, these are going to bob close to the surface, and you'll be able to see if they go under the water that, hey, you've got a fish. We typically fish with frozen shrimp or even fresh shrimp, but something like this is good. This looks real enough, and it's already made with the weights in the belly here, and also the hook on top, and you just tie onto that right there. So we usually don't use fake baits because, again, we do use either fresh or we either use fresh bait or frozen bait. So I have some more bobbers here. These guys are bigger. These are wonderful for open water where the water's really deep. We use these typically when we go to the Naples Pier. Again, the tip here is also weighted to keep it upright in the water. They also make bobbers, like when I was a kid, we had bobbers that had little batteries, little watch batteries in them, and they would actually illuminate. So then you have these guys. Look how teeny tiny these are. These are great for freshwater fishing. You can also use them in the backwaters. Like yesterday I tried using the backwaters, but my weight on my fishing line was too heavy, and I just didn't want to take the time to switch it out to a smaller one, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Hooks. Okay, so let me show you some hooks here. A hook that's small like that. This is maybe about the size of a child's index finger. See how small that is compared to my hand? A hook that's small like that. Okay, so there's absolutely nothing that you're going to catch in salt water, you know, bigger than a bass, that you're going to be able to actually hold with that hook. So we do freshwater and saltwater fishing, so I've got tackle for both. Hooks like this, which this one's great. Hooks like this are awesome because of the way they are made, and that's actually these hooks right here. Because of the way that they are made, I dropped it. Gotta get that picked up. So hooks like this and hooks like this. Oh, how did that little one get in there? These guys are made for open water. They are made a lot better than that little brown one I showed you. This one's even got barbs on the back of it to catch anything that gets a hold of. This one is smooth shaft. Even though the one on the left of my hand is a smaller one, the way it is made for bigger fish. See, in my tackle box here, my son's tackle box, I should say, we've got two different kinds of fishing line. We've got a nylon, almost a string type fishing line, which is this one. It looks like a yellow thread. This one is a 30-pound test. There is 150 yards on here. A 30-pound test, you could catch up to about a 50-pound fish without too much issue. And then this guy, this is a regular nylon cord string. This is a 20-pound test, so you could probably get up to probably a 40-pound fish on this. Your regular reel, a nice size reel, will hold quite a bit of this. Now this came with 660 yards, so you're definitely never going to get that much on one of those, but the possibility is there. Okay, so let's move up to the weights. So, and I've got these set up as best I can in here, but so weights are deceptive at times. So something little like this, it's got a little weight on it. I don't think it's got a number on it or not. No, but something like this is great that kind of hangs off. These are the bigger ones. These guys, something this size here, anything this size and bigger, you really want to use in deep water. These little ones like this, these are kind of cool. You put your line through that hole, and give them a squeeze, and pinch them closed. And these guys are great for just shallow waters. They technically, yesterday, what we should have done with any of our fishing stuff that we had, we should have switched out to these for our weights. I just did not realize the tide was out when we first got there. You have weights like these. The little one obviously weighs less than the big guy. Always always check your weight from one place to the next when you're fishing. These cone ones aren't as heavy as they look. They're just made differently. And so you can see straight through, your line goes in there. Then something like this and bigger is what you would use in open water. Look at the size of that guy. These guys you would use in open water. These get your bait down farther than it would have gone otherwise. Now, I think I've got two kind of leaders in here. Leaders are awesome, honestly, when you buy them, because they are actually made of metal. You can tell the cording is just, it's incredible the way these are made. This is definitely made for deeper fishing than where we were at yesterday. These are 3/4 of an ounce weights. They're really heavy. They'll fall straight through the water. And then right here on the end of it, you would pinch that open. You would slide a hook onto it. And then up here, this piece here is what you would tie your, this piece right here is what you would actually tie your line through. And that's what I'm going to show you here in a little bit, is actually how to do that tying of the line, because it's just not making a knot. There's a little bit more to it. If you just make a knot, you're going to lose it, because a good heavy fish is going to pull it right off. These are the hooks here that my son and I were using yesterday. These are great. These are size 7 Seaguard. He caught 2 fish yesterday on these hooks, and they weren't coming off anytime soon. In fact, when we were trying to get the fish off the hooks, they were hard to get off because of the way those suckers are made. Look at these itty bitty little hooks. See these teeny weeny little guys? These are definitely freshwater hooks. You could not do anything with these in saltwater. I think these came with like a little grouping of tackle that was purchased. So here are the other kind of leaders. You can buy the leaders that are completely blank, that have the tops and bottoms to them. You can add your own stuff to them. And you have leaders like this. These guys are awesome as well. These actually come with a nice saltwater hook on them. And then you tie them onto your line again. So we're going to okay, so this video here, I'm going to show you how to do a couple of different casting techniques. See, holding in my hand, I've got the line under my hand. I'm flipping the bell. Now this cast is going to be over the shoulder. So now I'm going to reach around, and I am going to cast over my arm. As I fling, I let go of the line, it lands, and then flip the bell back and reel it in some. So for the purposes of just doing this video, I'll do a little side cast. There we go. Obviously you're not going to do this unless you've got a spinner or something on this line. And if you're standing on a dock, then there's an underhand cast you can do, but you cannot do that from a bank like this. But that kind of gives you an idea of how to cast if you don't know. Okay, so this is my son's tackle box. This is actually one that we use together. My husband doesn't fish. My son and I do fish together. So this is the type of tackle box I like to use. We've used smaller ones. We've used the ones that are made like an attaché case almost. But this one is the one I like. So let me get this open for you and show you what we have in here. Now right on top, I've got a couple leaders that have weights on them already. These leaders are okay to use. just keep in mind where you are fishing at, the weights that you use. Like where we were fishing yesterday, the weight I had on my line was just too heavy, but I didn't want to change anything out. These bobbers I tried yesterday, I think, as again, my weight were too heavy, so these guys did not float. And let me show you why they did not float. I did not realize when I was trying to use it that that is a weight right there. So if you are going to fish in shallow open water, this is all you need for a weight. And then what happens, these are going to bob close to the surface, and you'll be able to see if they go under the water that, hey, you've got a fish. We typically fish with frozen shrimp or even fresh shrimp, but something like this is good. This looks real enough, and it's already made with the weights in the belly here, and also the hook on top, and you just tie onto that right there. So we usually don't use fake baits because, again, we do use either fresh or we either use fresh bait or frozen bait. So I have some more bobbers here. These guys are bigger. These are wonderful for open water where the water's really deep. We use these typically when we go to the Naples Pier. Again, the tip here is also weighted to keep it upright in the water. They also make bobbers, like when I was a kid, we had bobbers that had little batteries, little watch batteries in them, and they would actually illuminate. So then you have these guys. Look how teeny tiny these are. These are great for freshwater fishing. You can also use them in the backwaters. Like yesterday I tried to use them in the backwaters, but my weight on my fishing line was too heavy, and I just didn't want to take the time to switch it out to a smaller one, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Hooks. Okay, so let me show you some hooks here. A hook that's small like that. This is maybe about the size of a child's index finger. See how small that is compared to my hand? A hook that's small like that. Okay, so there's absolutely nothing that you're going to catch in salt water, you know, bigger than a bass, that you're going to be able to actually hold with that hook. So we do freshwater and saltwater fishing, so I've got tackle for both. Hooks like this, which this one's great. Hooks like this are awesome because of the way they are made, and that's actually these hooks right here, because of the way that they are made. I dropped it. Gotta get that picked up. So hooks like this and hooks like this. Oh, how did that little one get in there? These guys are made for open water. They are made a lot better than that little brown one I showed you. This one's even got barbs on the back of it to catch anything that gets a hold of it. This one is smooth shaft. Even though the one on the left of my hand is a smaller one, the way it is made for bigger fish. See, in my tackle box here, my son's tackle box, I should say, we've got two different kinds of fishing line. We've got a nylon, almost a string type fishing line, which is this one. It looks like a yellow thread. This one is a 30-pound test. There is 150 yards on here. A 30-pound test, you could catch up to about a 50-pound fish without too much issue. And then this guy, this is a regular nylon cord string. This is a 20-pound test, so you could probably get up to probably a 40-pound fish on this. Your regular reel, a nice size reel, will hold quite a bit of this. Now this came with 660 yards. So You're definitely never going to get that much on one of those, but the possibility is there. Okay, so let's move up to the weights. So, and I've got these set up as best I can in here, but so weights are deceptive at times. So something little like this, it's got a little weight on it. I don't think it's got a number on it or not. No, but something like this is great that kind of hangs off. These are the bigger ones. These guys, something this size here, anything this size and bigger, you really want to use in deep water. These little ones like this, these are kind of cool. You put your line through that hole and give them a squeeze and pinch them closed. And these guys are great for just shallow waters. They technically yesterday, what we should have done with any of our fishing stuff that we had, we should have switched out to these for our weights. I just did not realize the tide was out when we first got there. You have weights like these. The little one obviously weighs less than the big guy. Always check your weight from one place to the next when you're fishing. These cone ones aren't as heavy as they look. They're just made differently. And so you can see straight through. Your line goes in there. And something like this and bigger is what you would use in open water. Look at the size of that guy. These guys you would use in open water. These get your bait down farther than it would have gone otherwise. Now, I think I've got two kind of leaders in here. Leaders are awesome, honestly, when you buy them. Because they are actually made of metal. You can tell the cording is just, it's incredible the way these are made. This is definitely made for deeper fishing than where we were at yesterday. These are 3/4 of an ounce weights. They're really heavy. They'll fall straight through the water. And then right here on the end of it, you would pinch that open, you would slide a hook onto it, and then up here, this piece here is what you would tie your, this piece right here is what you would actually tie your line through. And that's what I'm going to show you here in a little bit, is actually how to do that tying of the line, because it's just not making a knot. There's a little bit more to it. If you just make a knot, you're going to lose it, because a good heavy fish is going to pull it right off. These are the hooks here that my son and I were using yesterday. These are great. These are size 7 Seaguard. He caught 2 fish yesterday on these hooks, and they weren't coming off anytime soon. In fact, when we were trying to get the fish off the hooks, they were hard to get off because of the way those suckers are made. Look at these itty bitty little hooks. See these teeny weeny little guys? These are definitely freshwater hooks. You could not do anything with these in saltwater. I think these came with like a little grouping of tackle that was purchased. So here are the other kind of leaders. You could buy the leaders that are completely blank, that have the tops and bottoms to them. You can add your own stuff to them. And you have leaders like this. These guys are awesome as well. These actually come with a nice saltwater hook on them. And then you tie them onto your line again. Morning, Neapolitans. Neapolitan Gal here. Well, this video was supposed to go up yesterday, but some crazy stuff came up, and I just didn't get the chance to put everything together in order to upload by 8 o'clock last night. So I'm going to make the video even better than I originally planned on. What you're seeing here are different brands of fishing line, and fishing gear is purchased and is designed for different types of fishing. Freshwater and saltwater fishing, most definitely. Those are two of your biggest types of fishing right there. And your tackle has to match the type of water you're fishing in. And not so much for the water itself, it's for what's in the water. You'll see a 14-pound test. You'll see 50-pound test, 80-pound test, and something little like a 15-pound test. This is stuff like you would use in freshwater. 150-pound test, this is when you're going to go out and you're looking for big stuff. This is when you're planning on going out and fishing for marlin and stuff like that, and sharks. So you always want to look, when you're buying your tackle, you want to look at the weight of the line. I think I use a 40-pound, which will get you up to about a 60-pound fish, but I also fish almost exclusively in salt water. I am going to start fishing the Everglades backwater brackish, which gives you salt and fresh water together. Hopefully no pythons or alligators, but so yeah, you see there, and this is actually the brand I use right here, but I use a 40-pound test. But as you can see, there are different brands that you can get. There are different weights that you can get. So if you're planning on going freshwater fishing, a 15, 20-pound test is perfectly fine. If your butt is going on a boat, you go higher. If you are going to be fishing off of a dock or off of a pier or a bank and backwater of saltwater, you could probably get away with something as low as a 50 or a 40. So you really have to buy for where you plan on fishing at. Same holds true for your hooks. Fishing hooks are another thing that are specific, that you want to be careful with what you get for the environment that you are fishing in. So when you go to the store, if you're planning on going out saltwater fishing, the last thing you want to do is buy the teeniest, tiniest little hooks you can find. And same range true if you're going to go freshwater fishing. The last thing you want to do is buy the most gigantic hooks that you can find. Stick with what fish you're planning on catching. If you're going freshwater fishing, stick with something small. Weedless hooks are great if you're planning on fishing in, let's say, the Everglades or someplace with a lot of sawgrass, a lot of vegetation in the water. Little hooks, fishing with little hooks in saltwater is just a joke. I mean, if you fish with a hook that's not meant to, catch more than maybe a 5 or 6 pound bass, and you're fishing in saltwater, and here comes along this great big old fish, it's not going to catch anything. It might nick the fish's lip as it's taking a bite of your bait and on the way out, but you're not going to catch anything with a tiny little hook in saltwater. Just like you're not going to catch much of anything, if anything, with a gigantic hook in freshwater. Where your fishing line and your fishing hooks are important, so are the additional tools that you really do need in order to have a great experience of fishing. Your fishing rod, for example, you have very thin fishing rods that are about the size of a pencil that you would use to write with. Those are for freshwater. You have also the ones that are really not so really thick. They start out about the thickness of a Sharpie, maybe a little bit thicker than a Sharpie, and taper down to something about the size of a pencil. Those are for backwater and shoreline saltwater fishing. You can also use them on a boat if you're not going out very far and not really expecting to catch anything huge. But then you also have, I just saw one down here. You also have the fishing rods that these types of reels hook onto. These types of fishing rods, they are meant for big game. And those are the ones, you can use those for regular saltwater fishing. It might look a little ridiculous with the bigger big game reels and such, but this is actually a smaller of the big game reels. There's some really massive chunky ones that you can also get. So like this little reel here, this would be something about half the size of the one you're going to see me using in the coming videos. These are the small ones. These guys, they're meant for freshwater. They're just not meant for the heavier fish that you're going to catch in saltwater. Same range true with the little Zebcos like this guy here. These little reels are not made for big game, so these little guys here and this little one is about the same size. It's just this one is a closed-faced reel. This is a Zebco, whereas this one is an open-faced bail. The difference is this was a real pain in the caboose if your line gets loose in it. This one you can at least see what's happening. But these guys are not meant for saltwater. You can take them in saltwater, but they're just not meant to handle the type of fish that you're going to find in saltwater versus freshwater fishing. However, you can use these guys up north in frozen lakes. You can use them for ice fishing. Those you can do ice fishing unless you're in walleye country, where they're gigantic pike and walleye, then maybe not so much. But those you can use for freshwater, and which also it is freshwater when the ice fishing. These little guys here, yeah, I mean, technically you could use a well-made open-faced reel in saltwater, the smaller ones, but again, they're just not designed for the pool. They're not designed to hold the amount of line that you are going to need sometimes for saltwater. They're not designed for the weightiness of the fish that you're going to be trying to catch. The gears are just not designed for the drag that you're going to have. That's the word I'm looking for, the drag. So then this is another small one like the little one I was just showing you up here. You get reels like this that they are made for big game. They're just designed for that. They're meant to be taken on the boat. They're meant to be used for big game. Even the smaller ones like this they're still designed for that they're for sport fishing. Hands down, those are the kind of reels that you really do want for sport fishing. And here's a closer look. This is a smaller one. See, this is inshore bait cast. Yeah, you could probably catch something big on this, but you don't have much line on this. This is really meant for close quarter fishing. But as you take a look at some of these reels, this looks like a larger reel, like the one I have on my fishing rod. This looks like something you would use more for saltwater. You'll see if you go to the store and start shopping for reels, you're going to see two basic sizes of these. You're going to see one, if you were to make a fist, you're going to see one that isn't much bigger than your fist, a single-handed fist. If you put your both hands together and, you know, make like if you're going to make the church and the steeple type hands when you were a kid, and you know, here's the church, here's the steeple, open the doors, look at all the people. If you were to do that, so that is the size reel that you use for that and bigger for saltwater fishing. The one about the size of a single adult fist is for your freshwater. The one about 2 sizes of 2 hands is your saltwater. The difference between the two is how they're made, the amount of weight and drag that they are designed to take, and most importantly, the amount of line that they are designed to hold. A smaller smaller reel is not meant to hold much line. If you get a hold of a big fish in open water, you might lose all your line if you have a smaller reel. Whereas if you have a reel like the one I have, a bigger one, or like one of these larger sport reels. Excuse me, these bigger bait casting reels. These are smaller ones. These are small ones, but you see the big open water ones, something like this or bigger. These guys are meant to hold sometimes up to an entire reel of fishing line. So we're gonna just kind of go down through and just show you a few more here. Here shortly. So this one is a bigger one. This you could probably get at least a half a roll or more of a standard size thing of fishing line on. Whereas something smaller like this, the microlight, you probably wouldn't get that much on. And you can never put too much line on one of these because it'll start coming back off the bell. So let's jump right in.